in 1967. A lot of people probably don't think there was a school back then, but there was. Now, if we continue to let Gascon have his way, Los Angeles County will become more dangerous than Chicago and Detroit put together. Mark my word. The misdemeanors have been removed. It's okay to run from a police officer. It's okay to assault. It's okay to have drug possession. We don't have bail now. We just let. There's been cases that individuals have committed 4 crimes in one day, and every single time they just get a slap on the hand, write them a citation, and they go home. The ones I feel sorry for is the police officers. They are working their hearts out, putting their lives on the line every single day of the week. And all that happens, we let the people go home because of George Gascon. Hundreds of cases are being filed, but yet very few out of these hundreds wind up getting any charges actually charged on them. Gascon is the criminal's best friend. He is a tremendous public defender. Uh, we've got to do something to help our children and our grandchildren. I can't bring my son back. I can't bring Jacob Dominguez back, but I can help fight for your children and your grandchildren and make the streets safer. We have to do something. There's nothing worse than getting a knock on the door and finding out there's a homicide detective at your front door. No parent should ever have to go through this. This is not something we do normally to bury our children. Our children should bury us. And I'm really big into this recall effort, and I go around several days a week gathering signatures. Every police officer has signed. Every single police officer has signed our petition. We have people from Gascon's office that have signed our petition, honestly. Uh, I don't know what we're going to do, but we have this man that's just going against everything and acting like he's some sort of above the law. What he's doing, many of the things he's doing are completely illegal. And I feel sorry for the police officers. That's one of the things, and they're putting their lives on the line. And we need to do something to stop this evil man. And I just want to, I'll keep fighting to help your children and your grandchildren. And I know my story is a little hard to deal with there, but I'm just one of many victims. It's no longer a special enhancement or a special circumstance to shoot a police officer. There's a beautiful lady out in, I believe it's Palmdale, Lancaster area. Her husband brutally murdered. It was a setup. They were waiting for him. They even shot him one time through the badge to prove their point when he was on the ground. Gascon won't file the charges of enhancement or special circumstances. 2 6-year-old boys were raped and murdered in Los Angeles County. Gascon wouldn't do anything. Luckily, Todd Spitzer got it transferred to Orange County. Orange County, San Bernardino County, Riverside County do not, they're not under Gascon's law. So I just want to thank you all for letting me speak. And like I said, I think we have maybe 28 cities now that have now joined and voting no confidence, and we're growing every day.
So it's 23.
Thank you so much for letting me speak tonight.
Oh, Mr. Ryan, thank you very much for sharing your story with us. Obviously, wow, very impactful, and what a terrible situation that, like you said, no one should certainly ever have to experience. And it's terrible, the story that is. It's like I said, it's very powerful, very impactful, and quite honestly, it's probably what people need to hear to really understand the full gravity of the situation. So really, thank you, Mr. Ryan, for sharing that. I know that that's probably something that's very difficult to do, but very important nonetheless. And you're exactly right. There's nothing that you can do to change what happened, but you can certainly do things to help prevent it from happening to others. And I thank you for doing that. And I thank you for speaking to us and for sharing your story. It's just a terrible situation. to be faced with that. So again, thank you very much for sharing your story.
Thank you. And as you know, being a detective, you know that I'm just one of many, many, many cases like this.
Mhm. Yes.
Yes.
So thank you again.
Thank you, Mr. Ryan. Thank you. Appreciate it.
Okay, bye-bye.
Thank you. Well, that was a very powerful statement, and my heart goes out to Mr. Ryan and his family. Before I go on, a little bit about me. I retired from LAPD after 30 years of service. When you consider I was a reserve officer for 2 years prior to that, and I did a total of 28 and a half with LAPD. 20 plus years investigating crimes against children and sex crimes, crimes of physical abuse, sex abuse, and murder. I'm sorry, one of the things I've allowed myself as a detective is I've always allowed myself to feel the pain of my victim's family or the victim themselves, if they're survivors. And it's that pain that I use to give me a greater resolve to fight for them. I used to work for Gascon when he was my lieutenant, when we were responsible for conducting background checks on police applicants. And even back then, I should have known. I saw something that I experienced with Mr. Gascon. I was known to be one of the top investigators in police backgrounds, and he gave me this thick file of a special project, he called it. And there was a police applicant who wrote a letter to everybody and their mother complaining that LAPD wasn't giving him a fair shot in backgrounds. Long story short, I conducted that investigation of this police applicant. I learned quickly that this applicant was involved in a string of burglaries, of ATM burglaries, because he was actually working as an armored car carrier at the time. So he had easy access and knowledge of the ATM machines, and he recruited his other dishonest employees, and together they burglarized and they netted millions and millions of dollars, and most of them got away with it, except for a few of them. So with that information, I put him on a polygraph and he failed it, and I interrogated him, and this applicant confessed to me. He confessed his deeds and everything he did. So I was very happy that I was able to get enough information to disqualify him from becoming a police officer. But when I got this information, I gave it to Lieutenant Gascon, and I said, LT, we got him. And guess what? He's going to be a permanent DQ. But you know what? I have his recording, his confession, and I'm going to give it over to the Los Angeles County Sheriff's Department because it's their case. And also the Westminster Police Department also has an open case. I'm going to give this recording to them so they could do their investigation and prosecute him. He flat out told me no. And I said, why not? Because you didn't give him Miranda. He says, wait a minute. I didn't have to give him Miranda. He was not in custody. He wasn't under arrest. And then he orders me, he goes, I order you, do not give this recording to anybody, period. So this guy got away with it. I share that story because even back then, years ago, he already had this mindset where he was more in favor and advocating for the criminals than he was for victims. And now that I see what he's doing now, he was living, he was living a double life here. Here he's portraying that he's a cop, but he really wasn't. And now fast forward, when I retired from LAPD, I began to work for this law firm that Kathy Katie is now associated with. And Kathy Katie was one of the attorneys that Mr. Ryan described. And the reason why those enhancements, the reason why that judge dismissed those special circumstances and enhancements was because George Gascon ordered his prosecutor to make that motion. Normally, a motion like that is made by a defense attorney or public defender. But it came from the prosecutor. It's like, oh my gosh, how is that even possible? But thankfully, a judge in a civil court based on a lawsuit filed by the association that represents the prosecutors here in LA County. They filed a lawsuit against Gascon, and the civil judge agreed and called those 4 directives that were mentioned in this lawsuit unlawful. You heard me right, unlawful. So what does that mean? It means that Mr. Gascon violated the law. And the reason I point that out is because that's one example. Another example is Gascon did something that was already unethical, borderline criminal, when he ordered another prosecutor, Richard Doyle is his name, Deputy District Attorney Richard Doyle. He ordered him to dismiss a case altogether on 3 defendants. These 3 defendants were Black Lives Matter protesters that were charged and prosecuted for the civil unrest that was happening. And they were trying to derail a train that was full of people out in Compton area. Solid case, solid video evidence, solid testimony. Everything was solid about this case until Gascon took office. He ordered this prosecutor to dismiss that case. And this prosecutor stood his principles and his values, and he declined to do that. As a result, Mr. Gascon issued him a written reprimand for insubordination, and that was the first blemish on this prosecutor's 30-plus year career. As a result, that prosecutor filed a claim, which is the first step for a lawsuit against the County of Los Angeles. And before it could turn into a lawsuit, the county board of supervisors did a backdoor deal or secret deal and paid off this prosecutor, and off he went, and we don't even know how much he paid. And this, Mr. Ryan mentioned Bill Malusian. This story was covered on Fox 11 as an expose. And normally stories, if you watch the news, stories, when they cover them, they're no longer than 2-3 minutes tops. On this particular night, this story went on for 10+ minutes and laid out everything I just told you in a lot more details, with a lot more testimony, and Mr. Doyle himself speaking to Bill Malusian. The very next day is when they settled this deal. He walked away with God knows how many millions. I bet you that he already cost the taxpayers of LA County multi-millions, and the Board of Supervisors are not doing anything. As you recall, when Sheriff Villanueva was elected, day 2 after being elected, the Board of Supervisors took the steps to look and inquire how they could remove the sheriff after only 1 day of service. But they haven't done anything to this man, Gascon, and let him run amok. Not only that, but they've given him millions of dollars to hire an outside prosecutor to and to specifically be tasked with looking at criminal cases against police officers involving officer-involved shootings. That's where his priority is. His priority is going after police officers. Now, don't get me wrong. I'm for holding everyone accountable. And when anyone breaks the law, including the police officer, whether they're on duty or off duty, they should be held accountable for everything that we do if they violate the law. I'm not saying to give police officers special treatment. That's not what I'm saying. But what I am saying is Mr. Gascon has a hard-on for police officers, and that's where his focus is. And now, another example. So I mentioned that the reason why these charges were dismissed and special enhancements in Mr. Ryan's case, his son's case, is through these directives. There was 10 of them altogether. But these directives say that deputy district attorneys can no longer attend pro hearings on behalf of the victims. No more life without the possibility of parole on any case. No more death penalty on any case. No more gun allegations. So if somebody uses a gun to murder somebody or shoot somebody, that allegation is out. No longer are they being charged. The gang enhancements are out the window as well. And so these are actually codified in the penal code. That's why they're there. They're there for a preventive measure. Now, I don't think it's a coincidence that ever since Gascon took office, and these criminals feel more emboldened to commit their crimes, we've seen a shooting rise of these shootings statistics off the roof. Murders are way up, shootings are way up, and I think it's because the criminals are feeling more empowered, more emboldened to do this because they really know that there's no more consequence. As a matter of fact, um, I have connections with the deputy sheriffs that work in the jails in LA County, and I've heard it from more than one deputy that the gangsters, the criminals, the inmates in LA County Jail, they love Gascon. They love him so much that they have a special name for him. They actually call him Homie Gascon. And to me, that says it all. And he has really changed the dynamics. And some of his prosecutors that he hired, he brought them over from the public defender's office, straight over, lateral. And and there's word that many prosecutors have seen these now prosecutors when they walk into a courtroom, they have their ID hanging. On one side of the ID is their ID as a prosecutor, and right behind it is their ID as a public defender. So they still don't give up their ties to the public defender's office or even their philosophy. I believe, and I have a lot of friends who are public defenders, and we have mutual respect for one another. They have a job to do, and so do the police officers, and so do the prosecutors. Prosecutors are not tasked with advocating for the criminals. That's not what they're supposed to be doing. They're supposed to be advocating for their victims and getting justice for them. And Mr. Gascon has stripped away that ability. They are no longer able to do that. That's why many of these prosecutors and detectives reached out to us. Under Marcy's law is the Bill of Rights for victims that's written in the California Constitution. One of those rights is to have representation by either an attorney or representative. And that's where I personally have been going to court. Whenever we have a situation where we don't have enough attorneys to go around or nobody's available on a particular day, I'll go and I'll do the best I can and fight for our victims. And I've been to Pomona Court many times to do that. And those are some of the things that's been happening. And then I didn't even touch on the shenanigans that his office is doing, where they offered a 7-year backdoor deal to a murderer that was a backdoor deal that been publicized. It's on the news. There's transcripts about this, where on the record, a public defender tells the judge, "Your Honor, I was here because I thought we were going to have a plea deal." And he goes, "You thought that?" He goes, "What made you think that?" "Oh, Mr. Trujillo gave me an offer," and Mr. Trujillo wasn't even part of the prosecution team that handled that case. The prosecutor in that particular case didn't even know about this communication that went back and forth, that there was this 7-year deal. The reason why we know it was communicated because that public defender said it on the record that she communicated that offer to her client and that her client was willing to accept it. If there was never any offer made, as they now contend that there was no offer made, she wouldn't have ever presented that to her client, the defendant. So that's some examples that's been going on, and the public doesn't really understand that. And another thing that I could tell you from my personal experience attending these hearings, I've heard public defenders on the record tell the judge, "Your Honor, I'm aligning myself with DA George Gascon on this issue." I'm going, what? How that you never heard of? When Steve Cooley was a DA, when Jackie Lacey was a DA, even when you go back to Ira Reiner as a DA, you never heard that kind of stuff. Why? Because it's not set up to be that way. It's an adversarial system. The public defender is to make sure that their clients' rights are protected, that they're not violated. And I'm okay with, and Mr. Gascon wants to do that. If he wants to advocate for criminals and do what he can for prison reforms and justice, I'm all for that. Go ahead, do it. But do not do it as a prosecutor. Do not do it as a DA. That's not your job. He must be told. And so far, we have 23 cities when we include the Walnut, city of Walnut, that last night that voted a 4-to-1 vote to show a favor of no confidence. Yes, it's symbolic. Yes, it doesn't have any binding, but it sure sends a message to Mr. Gascon and his executive team. And it also, more importantly, sends a message to the residents of that city of where their leaders stand. And hopefully it translates into more signatures for that recall, more signatures, and more money, more funding, and more volunteers. I've personally, my view on this is that we need to start electing leaders who put people first, support law enforcement, and put criminals last. It's that simple for me. It really is. Because right now it's more popular for a elected official to show some sort of support for the criminal element than it is for law enforcement. And so let's see. Yeah, so no more strikes, which means that there was a case where this guy was being charged with uh, child molestation and possession of child pornography with the live victim, but the prosecutor was not allowed to bring in his prior strikes, his prior convictions. His prior convictions were child molestation or rape of a child and child pornography. Same thing that he's being charged with now. So can you imagine that? That this case has to move forward in the criminal courts system with this in mind, that this is the only time this defendant has ever done this. We can't use his past against him because of Gascon. That I don't get it. It's almost like telling the previous victims that whatever he did to you doesn't matter. It doesn't count. There's no more great bodily injury allowed. So another scenario, if you are a victim of, let's say, a DUI collision, and you suffer some serious injuries, the injuries you suffer that severe, they're not coming in as special enhancements of great bodily injury. These enhancements, what they do is they add time to the sentencing. That's why it's supposed to work as a deterrent. Because when people start noticing, hey man, they're getting some serious prison time, it's not worth it. That's what it's meant for, and that's there. Another way that they're getting around, because now here's what's happened. When the injunction was issued, that injunction has saved the cases that are currently being prosecuted. But that injunction does not save the new cases coming in, the new murders, the new rapes, the new cases that coming in where they have prior strikes. Those are not coming in there because now Gascon can use his discretion to not follow those things. And so with that being said, so that means that if a suspect commits a crime in Orange County, Riverside County, San Bernardino County, Ventura County, they'll be held accountable to the full extent of the law because those DAs are following the law. If they committed here in LA County, not so much. It's going to be charged totally different. And it shouldn't be that way. Let's see what else. So no more gang enhancements. And trying to think if I'm missing anything else. And zero bail. And just the other day, I represented a family there in Pomona Court. This mother, her son was murdered at the hands of the biological father and the stepmother, tortured, very bad case. They filed charges finally of torture and murder on both defendants. Not initially, but they did eventually. And the prosecutors had to go into that courtroom, again, because of George Gascon's directives, and ask the judge, Your Honor, these are the prosecutors, not the defense attorney. They said, Your Honor, can you please set the bail to an amount that our client could afford? I was lost for words. That was uttered by a prosecutor and not even the defense attorney. They just sit there and be quiet and let the prosecutor do their job. So those are some examples that are happening, and this is why I'm urging anyone and everyone to get involved with this recall movement by, number one, signing the petition, volunteer to gather more signatures and help fund it, any amount. Full transparency, I am also a volunteer for the recall movement of the recallgeorgegascon.com. And the law firm that I work for now, my boss, he's a former prosecutor, and he himself has represented victims like Kathy Katie and Steve Cooley free of charge, pro bono. And when that first started happening, Gascon's office, Mr. Max Zabel, started saying that we were just doing it for the money. Well, he got it all wrong, because we're not even getting paid. In fact, we're losing money, because whenever we spend more time with these cases, we're not spending time on our clients that actually do pay us. And so that's what we're all about. And I'm getting behind also the recall movement for Governor Newsom. He's releasing thousands and thousands and thousands of inmates from prison. I personally was receiving that list once a week, the list that corresponded to LA County. And on that list had the names of the convicted felons and their charges. And the charges range from murder, rape, child molestation, assault with a deadly weapon, kidnapping, you name it. It was the worst of the worst. Then these people were being released. That's why I'm saying we got to go back and start recalling these people that are making our communities dangerous, and elect people that are gonna make us safe. And on a side note, I'm on the campaign to get Eric Early elected for California Attorney General. And Eric Early has been very vocal about being law enforcement, supporting law enforcement and holding the state responsible for everything, and he wants to make it right. But I'll open it up for any questions now, if you think that's appropriate at this point, or do you want me to continue?
No, that was great. And I think that really the examples that you gave were obviously on top of Mr. Ryan's statements, and your examples and your firsthand experience are all very impactful. And I think they do a really great job of demonstrating some of the shortcomings that in the policies that are currently in place when it comes to law enforcement in our county. I think that there was one question that Alexandra had. Detective Castillo, what would you say is like the best source or the best website to learn about some of the information that Gascon has done, or some of his policy changes, or where would you recommend that people can kind of read up a little bit more or find out more?
Yeah, recallgeorgegascon.com is one, and Eric Early for CA.com. On Eric Early's website, it's actually really done. It has about 20, 25 little video segments where he actually addresses a lot of issues. And they're right on, talking about a rogue DA, talking about pro law enforcement. And if you go to the website of recallgeorgegascon.com, you're going to see where you could sign the petition. It has the locations where people are. There's a calendar where you could see where the petitions are being circulated, how you could donate, the reasons why. And there's also some videos of news stories that cover this. One of the things that Gascon has said, he said that anybody in prison for more than 15 years doesn't work. So in his way of thinking, 15 years is the max, and then they should be let out. A year ago, or a year prior to him being elected, because when he announced he was running, a professor from USC, and I forget the professor's name, was interviewed him, and they called it a conversation with George Gascon. And it's on YouTube. You can find it. If you go to YouTube, you'll find it. It's about an hour plus long interview. But in that interview, he uttered these words, or something very similar. He said, "I don't believe the government should be allowed to punish people." He said that. So if he doesn't think the government should punish people, then he believes that they should all be released. And he keeps talking about mass incarceration. He has issues with this mass incarceration. But what he's forgotten about is the mass victimization that he's causing. Now, when you think about these policies that he says he's doing this to help the people of color. But you know what? When you release these prisoners and you get these prisoners to get paroled, they're not going to go to Beverly Hills. They're not going to reside in West LA or Pacific Palisades or Malibu. They're going to go back to the South End, South Los Angeles, the inner cities. And those people are being re-victimized. And I hear it all the time. I still have friends in LAPD um, and believe it or not, I've kept in contact with a lot of the families that I've serviced throughout my career. We still stay in contact because, it's awesome to see. I met them in the most dark time in their life, and to see them now moving forward and thriving. I'm sure they have their moments. I'm sure they have some really good days and really bad days, but overall, it's awesome to see them really get to a place in the life where they could thrive and be successful. But the point is, so his way of thinking or his message is sending, it's confusing people, because then he says that he has studies that show that victims actually want uh, their perpetrators released. Where? Where is that? And the study he cited is not even peer reviewed. It's not even published. So, and I've never seen a study where you interview convicted murderers and rapists. Those people, I'm sorry, those people could never be rehabilitated. Never. There's some of them you just have to throw away the key. You just can't do that. And he wants to give these people a second chance. And then they snuck in this thing that it's called elder parole. And they snuck it in so good that some judges don't even know about it. And this is what elder parole is. Elder parole, when they first passed it a few years ago, it was for somebody that was convicted of a crime and serving a life sentence, that once they reach age 60 and or serve 20 years combined, first you have to serve 20 years or reach age 60, then you could be eligible for parole. By the way, right now, the parole boards are releasing people left and right, granting them parole. But then since since they were actually surprised that this law was passed, they snuck in a revision, and the revision is, well, now you have to be 20 years in prison, serving your time, and then reach age 50. So you've been right. So if you serve 20 years of your life sentence and you reach age 50, you could be eligible for parole under this elder parole. Elder parole. It sounds like a pension plan. Here at LAPD, you serve 25 years of service and you reach age 50, you could actually retire. So it's like, wow, we're giving these prisoners this elder parole. And the reason I say a judge doesn't, some judges don't even know about this. There was a George Gascon plea deal where he offered, well, the way he's getting around this injunction that this judge said you can't release, you can't dismiss these enhancements or special circumstances, you can't do any of that. So the way around it is this, because he's so in cahoots with the public defender's office, is this is what's happening. A public defender says to a prosecutor, my client is willing to take 20 years. And now that prosecutor has a duty to then mention that offer up the chain of command, and the chain of command has to give an answer. While Gascon has told him, hey, defense attorney, you give us an offer and we'll give it to you. And that's what's happening. So now this person was convicted of killing 2 people, execution style, lying in wait, and almost murdering a 3rd person. They settled that case that number 1 could have been a death penalty or life without the possibility of parole. They settled that case for 40 years. And the judge accepted that plea deal. And then right before he was about to make the sentence officially, he allowed the victim's daughter to speak. And the daughter said, Your Honor, I am not happy with this deal. In fact, I'm asking you not to accept it because if you do, he'll be out in less than 20 years, actually 17, because he already served 3. He'll be out in 17 years. So the judge lets her speak. And then after he heard this daughter speak, he does the sentence and he gives him 40 years to life. And then he says, Madam Prosecutor, can you please tell the daughter that she's incorrect, that he's gonna have to do a hard 40 because he killed 2 people and almost a third. So he won't be out in 20. The prosecutor turns to that judge and says, well, Your Honor, actually, she is correct. Under the provisions of elder parole, she is correct. This guy will be eligible in 17 years. And then the judge put his head down and said, I did not know that. So you see, so if a judge didn't know that, and quite frankly, I didn't even know about elder parole, and I thought that I was really up to date on case law and changes in the law. I didn't know about elder parole, and I've been putting away people in prison for a long time. Well, let me rephrase that. I didn't put them away. They put themselves away. I just helped them get there by my investigation. But I didn't even know that. So, and if the judge didn't know that, I didn't know that. There's probably other judges that don't understand that. And the public is definitely not aware. So some of the things I've done that's been very useful and productive, I downloaded an app called Real Impact. Real Impact. And what you do is you just type in your address. And when you type in your address, it populates all of your elected officials from your local community, your local city, state, federal, all the way to the President of the United States. And you do is you just type in an email and it sends the email to all of them. And I got some responses back. One was on the issue of AB 1509, Assembly Bill 1509, which was going to remove the gang enhancements altogether. So since Gascon couldn't get this directives, the injunction to remove the gang enhancements, so they're trying to amend the law to do that. And AB 1509 would have done that, but I wrote the letter to my local assembly women, and she responded back that she said, hey, just so you know, thank you for letting me know that the issues that are important to you. This bill died in committee and never made it to me for vote, but thank you for bringing it to my attention. So I was glad to hear that that bill died. It didn't go outside the committee. But that's what I'm talking about. I'm talking about getting involved, learning about what laws are being proposed, considered, and I'm on it now. And I think hopefully others will continue to do that. So I'll entertain any questions that someone may have.
Yeah, we do have a couple. And again, thank you for the points you've made so far. Alexander had a question, and I have the same question actually. Are there any other that you're aware of? Are there any other DAs in the country that you've heard of that operate remotely similar to Gascon?
Yes, San Francisco, Chicago, Seattle, Portland. This is an issue that's happening throughout our country. And when you look at the background on some of these DAs, most all of them, if not all of them, were sponsored or backed by George Soros money. So there's this agenda of trying to get, they call these progressive DAs, but there's nothing progressive about them. It's more regressive.
Yeah.
But it's happening throughout our country.
And it's something like there was another question that came up. Oh, go ahead.
You know what? It's about to happen in Orange County if we're not careful. There's a guy named Peter Hardin that's running against Todd Spitzer. I live in Orange County, so I want to take a very close look at that race and get involved to not let that happen. But I'm trying to educate people. If you know of any friends or family that live in Orange County, it's going to be important to reelect Todd Spitzer more than ever because we don't want Orange County to become like LA.
And so,
Joe,
yes, sir.
Joe, if we
Brian.
could, I see Zephyr over in the corner there. She's got her hand up, but I know she's chomping at the bit, wanting to ask a question.
Oh, yes, please go right ahead. You'll have to just unmute yourself and then you
I
can
just
go
didn't
ahead.
want us to run out of time.
Thank you. I did not even see the little hand up, but now I do. Thank you, Brian. Appreciate that.
Hi,
Hello.
can you hear me?
Yep, we hear you great.
Yes, my little hand has been up for quite a while. My question is for the detective, because it sounded, according to my knowledge, some of the information is not totally accurate that he is stating. And I want to start first with the in-cash bail that you're reporting on. As a matter of fact, that is almost non-existent, right? Because of Proposition 25?
Well, you're
Detective?
absolutely right. You're absolutely right. Proposition 25 did pass. The voters did not want cash bail, but Gascon is ignoring that. He's initiating his own policies. So there's zero bail for child abuse and domestic violence. And so no, he's ignoring the will of the voters.
Well, I think actually he more or less advocates no bail, no cash bails because of poverty of people, and it is directed toward misdemeanors and non-violent or serious felonies, to be accurate.
Well, like I said,
And not just a blanket no cash bail. That's not accurate.
well, like I said, I appeared in court on a case where, per Gascon's directives, they asked the judge to reduce the bail to an amount that their defendant can afford.
And also it's directed toward what they call quality of life type of crimes. In other words, people who commit crimes such as public intoxication and things like that. These are kind of poverty type of crimes that people are accused of. That relates to the no cash bail. Okay.
Yes.
Well, I'll move on to the other question.
Okay.
You harped on the early release program. Actually, that early release program, ultimately, the judge has the final decision. Is that correct, sir?
From the Department of Corrections? No, it's not correct.
I didn't say Department of Correction.
Well, that's where the
I didn't
release
say
is coming.
that. The parole board will make that decision. And that's the reason why they want the prosecutors out of that room, because it is the parole board's decision. They should be making that decision, not the prosecutors sitting in on the parole board, influencing the parole board. And the final analysis is left up to the judge. In other words, as far as the early releasing, the judge can decide things pertaining to that. That is correct.
I don't agree with your assessment.
Mm-hmm. Well, okay, we don't have to agree, but I just want things to be presented in a manner that is more accurate than what I'm hearing. And are you aware of the fact that it's fewer than 1% of the people who are granted parole commit new violent crime?
I
Are
don't
you
agree with
aware
that.
of that percentage?
No, it's actually, I believe that's incorrect.
Well, what is your percentage, sir?
I don't have the exact amount, but I know it's not 1%.
Thank you.
And so there was another question that we had in the chat that basically pertained to cases that happened in the past. So essentially, like there was a case here in Laverne where an elderly couple was murdered by a homeless person. Would something like that be reevaluated if Gascon were to be recalled or move out of office or someone else came in?
So if I understand correctly, so if, let's say Gascon directives somehow
affected this case theoretically,
and the new day comes in, yes, there could be a possibility that it, well, hopefully it happens sooner than later, even while Gascon is in office, because I'm waiting for Mr. Gascon to file an appeal, and I think he is going to file an appeal because he hired an attorney that's going to represent him in the lawsuit against him. And so I think that was the first step of filing an appeal to address the issues of this lawsuit, right? So I'm hoping that it does go to the appellate court so that I can maybe send a message and hopefully resolve this once and for all. So it, it really depends on the circumstances and a particular judge. Some judges are, in that particular case, it's going to be hard to say as to when it was, how it was impacted. Like in Mr. Ryan's case, the reason why the judge reconsidered it is because we filed a motion, but the judge, instead of saying, I'm going with your motion, I'm just going to reconsider my own motion myself. I'm not going to really put weight on the motion that was filed on behalf of the victims because the judge didn't think the victims have standing in this. And that's another issue that we're dealing with. But so some judges are taking a closer look and a second look, and we're grateful for that. But it's not. There's no easy answer to that question. I'm
Sure.
sorry.
I understand. And there was another really good question from Catherine in the chat. She says that I understand that trespassing and resisting arrest can no longer be prosecuted. Is that correct? And if so, a citizen who calls the police about a trespasser on his property who is harassing his family can do nothing. Is that correct?
That's correct. Especially, if thankfully in the city of Los Angeles, they have their own city attorney's office. So all misdemeanor cases are filed by the city attorney's office anyways. But the other cities such as Claremont and other jurisdictions that don't have their own city attorney, they do rely on the DA's office to file their misdemeanor cases. And absolutely correct. And even if the officers did enforce the law as best they could, they're not going to get filed on. There's no consequences to their actions.
Mm-hmm. And I see we have another hand up again, so you can go ahead and if you're unmuted, I think you are remuted again, so you can go ahead and unmute and ask away.
I guess you're referring to me, Zephyr, right?
Yes, correct. Thank you.
Thanks so much.
You didn't look like Rudy Man. Your caption says Rudy Man, but you don't look like a Rudy to me.
Okay. I could be a Rudy, but
you could be. It's 2021.
but that's my husband. He's right here with me. Okay, so but he's giving me the mic.
Good deal. Good. Go. You go right ahead.
The detective mentioned his disgruntledness with the idea that officers are the one who are being reviewed and etc. And I don't think that was adequately presented because currently there's a review of only 600 officer involved shootings. And that's going back to 2012. And those should be reviewed because I don't think the nation can ignore what has been happening regarding shootings, officer shootings, and they should be examined, reviewed.
Okay.
And
I did say that any police officer that commits a crime should be held accountable to the fullest. I won't shy away from that. There's nothing more that an honest cop hates, and that's a dirty cop, a criminal cop. So I'm with you on that.
They haven't been taking enough to do something about it.
And it looks like one more question here from Alexandra. And Alexandra, let me know if I got this question right. It looks like you had a question. Is there a list of misdemeanors that are no longer being prosecuted, or is it just misdemeanors in general?
I believe you mentioned trespassing, resisting arrest,
Yes.
prostitution, and then also I believe petty theft and those kind of things are not going to be prosecuted.
Mm-hmm. I see. Okay. Well, if anybody has any other questions, please go ahead and put those in chat, or you can raise your little hand up there with your options. And while I wait for any remaining last questions to come in, again, I just want to thank Detective Castillo again. Thank you very much for spending your Thursday evening with us. We really appreciate your insight. And thank you for all of the participants and the membership that has joined us for this meeting. A couple things that I want to touch on before we adjourn for the month. Bill Bueller and myself are working on organizing a meeting with the city We would really like to iron out the insurance details so that Active Claremont can resume its monthly trash pickup. So we are working on that. We do have our barbecue scheduled. We'll be sending out an email reminder to the membership regarding that. That's going to be in August, and we're looking forward to seeing everybody there. It's actually going to be, unless I'm mistaken, other than a board meeting, this will be our first in-person membership gathering of the year 2021. And actually, I think probably for most of 2020 as well. So I look forward to seeing everyone there that can make that. Lastly, I know that Brian's going to appreciate this announcement. I think we're all caught up on dues, right, Brian?
Oh, as you probably heard today, things got changed again in California. Everybody has to wear a mask again.
Yes.
And because of that, I have a feeling the city's probably not going to open the community center. That's a guess on my part. I don't know, but if they've been reluctant so far to open it, I think they're going to wait even longer because of the new virus that's out there. And now, as the whole state is supposed to be wearing masks again, so as of today, so I guess it's a wait and see.
Okay.
That's all
All
we
right.
can do.
Well, then that's what we will do. That's what we will do. We will do just that. So
Weekend.
just as a reminder, the meeting has been recorded and it will be uploaded to the Active Claremont YouTube page. So anybody that missed it or wants to rewatch it, or if there's anybody that wants to share or distribute it, it will be on the YouTube page and you will be able to link it to whoever you'd like. I didn't see any new questions pop up. So again, one more time, I would just like to thank Detective Castillo. Thank you very much for your service and for your time. We appreciate you joining us this evening. And thank you for all the participants and all the members that joined us. We will be right back with you here in 1 month for another speaker. And we will see you in August at the membership barbecue. And we will see you all next time. Thanks very much for joining. Bye-bye.
Detective Castillo, I want to thank you personally. Want to thank you. It's a hard thing to have to try to lay out everything that's been going on, and I appreciate you coming to us tonight and making this presentation. So thank you.
Well, you're welcome, sir. It was my honor. Thank you so much.
Yes, thank you again for joining with us. And it was a lot to I know a lot to take in, but I think those types of things are good for people to hear.
If anybody wants to reach out to me, Alexandra Scott has my information.
Excellent.
Feel free to connect with her, and I'm sure she'll relay the message. Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it. Bye, everyone.
Have a nice night.
Zephyr,
night.
talk to you later. Say hi to Rudy.
Bye, Rudy.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.